All right, pals, let's keep breaking it down with our one-step equations. So our goal with one-step equations is always to get the variable by itself. And we need to move any other number to the other side. Okay? So let's recap. What are the parts of an expression or an equation? So the constant is either is the number that is being added or subtracted to the variable. Remember that I can't see that, haha. The variable is the letter that stands for the number we don't know. And by solving, we can figure out what that number is. Okay. The coefficient is the number that is multiplying the variable. Okay, and so how we solve an equation is by inverse operations or opposite operations. So again, if that word inverse, if you would prefer to say opposite, just make a note that every time it says inverse, you are going to think opposite. Okay? So the inverse of adding is subtracting. Okay, and we draw an arrow back and forth because adding is the inverse of subtracting, subtracting is the inverse of adding. They go together. Okay. So then multiplying and dividing are inverses. So the opposite of multiplying is dividing. The opposite of dividing is multiplying. And if you write the symbols so you remember that it helps you know. All right, so for this first little section, we're just going to identify what operation is even happening. All right, sometimes that's the really confusing part. It's not necessarily, okay, how do I solve it, but like, which one is it? Okay. And remember that we circle our constant and we box our coefficient. So this says 4x equals 34. Our coefficient is the number multiplying the variable. So 4x means 4 times x. So the operation that's happening here is multiplication. So circle multiplication. Here I have y over 2 equals negative 35. Fraction bars mean dividing, so this is y divided by 2. So here I see division happening. So we're going to circle division. And we're always focusing on what's happening to my variable. What is the constant of my variable? Or what is the coefficient of my variable? Okay, so here I have a minus 8. That's a constant, so I'm going to circle that. My coefficient is 1. So I box my coefficient and I write in 1. Okay? So what's happening to my variable is that I'm subtracting 8, minus 8. So I'm going to circle subtraction. Okay? Okay, so we're going to answer each of these questions and then we're going to solve for the variable. So here I have 6x equals 252. 6x, 6 is my coefficient, so I'm going to box my coefficient. And that means 6 times x. So here I'm multiplying. So the operation that's happening in my equation is multiplication. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So to solve the equation, I'm going to do the opposite operation. I'm just going to rewrite it. You don't have to, but I like to rewrite it a little bit bigger. Okay, so 6x equals 252. Draw a line through your equal sign. The opposite of multiplying by 6 is dividing by 6. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. 6 divided by 6 is 1, so I get 1x. Then use your calculator. 252 divided by 6 is 42. So I got the variable by itself, I got 1x. I have all the other numbers on the other side. So 1x equals 42. Right, next one. X minus 7 equals 30.2. I'm going to circle my constant. So whatever's happening with the variable, that number being added or subtracted is the constant. So minus 7 is my constant. There's no number in front of my x, so I write in a 1. My coefficient is 1x. So I'm just trying to get that x by itself. Draw a line through the equal sign. So what's happening to my x is that I'm subtracting 7. The operation that's happening is subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition. Okay. So to solve for x, I'm going to do the opposite, which is adding. So to solve, instead of subtracting 7, I'm going to add 7. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So minus 7 and plus 7 are opposites. They cancel each other out. I'm left with 1x. And then we're going to do 30.2 plus 7. And make sure that you're writing that plus. We have to know what's happening with that 7. I can't just write it. It's 37.2. I got the variable by itself, so that's my answer. So x equals 37.2. All right, let's turn the page. All right, here I have n over 3 equals negative 18. So this over 3 is dividing. So I'm just going to box it so that I know that it's not adding or subtracting. Okay. Fraction bars mean divide, so I see division here. The opposite of division is multiplication. And then especially for ones like this, I'm just going to rewrite it because that's kind of tiny. So n over 3 equals negative 18. I draw a line through my equal sign to keep it organized. We said the opposite of dividing by 3 is going to be multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. Okay. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. So these cancel each other out. And with 1n equals, I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to do negative 18 times 3 is negative 54. So I got the variable by itself and the numbers on the other side. Just going to rewrite it here so that I know where my answers are. Okay. All right, so m plus 8 equals 52. There it goes. So I circle my constant, the plus 8, and I box my coefficient. There's no number in front of my m. The number that goes there is 1. It's a positive 1. So I write plus 1. Okay. So I'm going to cover up the equals for a second, focusing on what's happening to my variable. M plus 8. I'm adding 8. So that's the operation that's being done. So addition is what is happening. What is the opposite operation? The opposite of addition is subtraction. So now we're going to use that opposite operation to solve. I'm going to rewrite it because that got kind of messy. So literally all I did was I just rewrote it. I drew the line through my equal sign to keep it organized. The opposite of adding 8 is subtracting 8. What I do on the side with the variable, I have to do on the other side. Okay. Plus 8 and minus 8 are opposites, so they cancel each other out, and I'm just left with m. So then to simplify this side, 52 minus 8 is 44. I achieved my goal of getting the m by itself. It's only being multiplied by 1. I'm not adding or subtracting anything to it. So that's my answer. So m equals 44. Okay. All right, this one says negative 2z equals 79. So I'm going to circle my constant. So looking at my variable, the side with the variable, there's nothing being added or subtracted. So I don't have a constant, which means that this negative 2 is my coefficient. We box our coefficient. Negative 2z means negative 2 times z. So we're multiplying. The opposite operation of multiplication is division. Again, I'm just going to rewrite it because I like to do that. I write my z's like this so that I don't get them confused with 2's. So I draw a line through my equal sign. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2. That's why we're practicing boxing that entire number. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. See, my 2's and my z's would look the same. That's why. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. Then I draw my line underneath. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1. We just get z. Get our handy dandy calculator. 79 divided by negative 2 is negative 39.5. So I got my variable on its own and the numbers on the other side. So that's my solution. And it is totally okay to have a decimal answer. Okay. All right, this one says negative 7 plus h equals 12.8. It gives you a hint that you need to rewrite the problem. So I always want my variable on the left and then my numbers on the right. Okay. So I just need to flip-flop these guys. But first I'm going to circle my constant and box my coefficient. So my constant is on the side of the variable, the number itself. So negative 7 or minus 7 is my constant. Your coefficient is the number multiplying the variable. There's no number in front of this h, so 1 goes there. I'm going to box my constant of positive 1. So all I'm going to do is rearrange it. I'm going to put the variable in front. I have a positive 1h. Then I have minus 7. And then everything else is going to stay the same. Okay. And you don't have to write that positive one. Just need you to know that it's a positive one. Okay. So after we've rewritten our equation, h minus 7 equals 12.8. And I'll make my decimal a little bit clearer. So looking at my variable, what's happening to my variable is that I'm subtracting. So subtraction is the operation that's being done. The opposite of subtraction is addition. Okay. So to undo subtracting, I'm going to add. So draw a line through the equal sign. The opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. So since those are opposites, they cancel each other out. I'm left with h. We're going to use our calculator. 12.8 plus 7 is 19.8. So h equals 19.8. Last one. Thanks for hanging in there. So here I have my variables on this side. I want to rewrite it. I'm just going to flip-flop these guys. So that W over 5 equals 2.3. We want our variables on the left. Okay. So W over 5, this fraction bar means division. So division is the operation we see. The opposite of division, its opposite operation, is multiplication. So we're going to do that opposite to solve. Draw a line through your equal sign. The opposite of dividing by 5 is multiplying by 5. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. And I just chose parentheses here for multiplication. Since I have a decimal, I don't want to get confused between decimal dots and multiplying dots. Okay. So multiplying by 5 and dividing by 5 are opposites. They'll cancel each other out. That's with W. What I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So 2.3 times 5 is 11.5. So I got the variable on one side and the numbers on the other side. So W equals 11.5. So remember to just go through, draw that line, keep it organized, and think about each of these questions in your head. What's happening to my variable? I undo that by doing the opposite. What's the opposite? And then you do that opposite and you solve.